he made the statement that nuclear energy was essential because we needed electricity. And I pointed out to him at a public meeting, and he nodded his head in agreement when I insisted that nuclear energy does not produce electricity. It produces only two things. The first is a lot of heat, and the second is a lot of radioactive garbage. There are a lot of things that produce heat. There are a lot of ways to generate steam. And it's the steam that generates the electricity through the turbines spinning.
So we could have geothermal, wind, coal, natural gas, hydroelectric, the list goes on and on.
Yeah. And there is one irony. Among all of our energy sector players, there's only one industry that believes in global warming. It's not coal, it's not nuclear, it's not gas. It is the nuclear industry. Because they argue global warming can be solved with nuclear energy because we don't produce CO2 gases. Well,
that's why Monbiot has endorsed it. Yeah.
I know. It's such a narrow focus because the carbon dioxide is produced when you build the plant, when you extract the ore, when you refine the product, when you create the fuel assemblies, when you do all of the shipping, and then eventually the dismantling. The only time it doesn't produce CO2 is when it's busy producing huge amounts of unused heat and radioactive isotopes that are puffing away from the plants.
But listen, you're totally right on record that the plants are rotting, falling apart. The Associated Press admits that. My issue here is, I understand people think carbon dioxide goes up, it can make the sea levels rise. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that's real, which I disagree with from the scientists we've interviewed. Still, reactors rotting and melting down everywhere is a lot bigger deal. Why don't environmentalists get upset about nuclear power instead of embracing it? Because the big global warming advocates, George Monbiot, you know the list, they are just saying, I love it. In fact, his quote was, I believe in nuclear power more after Fukushima. I mean, what type of asinine statement is that? That's like Ann Coulter saying the radiation's good for you. The Japanese should thank the nuclear industry.
Yeah, well, we do have the unholy triad of George and Stuart Brand and Lovelace, who are supporting nuclear power, but that doesn't mean the majority of environmentalists have the same line. These are guys who have prominent celebrity positions, which are not reflective of the... so
they're shelling out. Okay, is nuclear the most dangerous thing, in your opinion, to the environment?
Yeah, the most dangerous man-made technology that I think we've ever developed.
Okay, and well, so if it's getting worse, I mean, where do you predict it's going to go now that they're going to even build more old design reactors and then keep the old ones going?
Well, they're actually they want to keep the old ones going because it's a way of continuing to make money instead of facing up to the fact that eventually they're supposed to tear these things down. They do want to build new design reactors in the U.S., down in Georgia and South Carolina. They want to build these AP1000s, and they're getting huge billion-dollar government loan guarantees to do it. But the construction isn't going too well, and the prospects are not too bright that they'll ever be finished or safely operated. And the basic design of these things was so problematic that not even the NRC could get a unanimous vote out of 5 to have a unanimous approval of the design. The former chair of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission refused to vote for these new AP1000 reactors because he said the engineering plan had not taken in the lessons of Fukushima. And getting back to Fukushima, we should bear in mind that those reactors that exploded in Japan were not Japanese reactors.
They were U.S.
Made by General Electric. And the basic lesson there is when you have 3 reactors side by side that explode sequentially, one after another, 1, 2, 3, and the 4th, which got damaged, what that tells you is that design, it's not designed just to produce a lot of heat. It was inadvertently designed, as we now see, to explode. We have 23 Fukushima-style reactors in the United States at 16 sites in 12 states. The NRC has put out a list of 27 U.S. reactors that are most at risk of a calamity in the event of a major local earthquake. On that list of 27, 5 are Fukushima-style reactors. there should be some concern, not only about the threat from earthquakes, which we now know are much higher in the Midwest and the Southeast, where most of the historic large quakes have hit and where most of our reactors are located. And also, we should be paying attention to the warnings from NASA and the National Academy of Sciences that we are entering a maximum solar year. It's already begun. We are getting hit with solar flares that are going to increase in frequency and in impact.
And I want to expand on that briefly, because that's what a lot of scientists have been on say is the biggest threat, because it can blow out the power systems and you have more meltdowns, which has been proven, but before with the pre-nuclear events to the power system in Russia and other areas. But what about all the insane ideas of now going to nuclear-powered spacecraft? And they're saying, oh, it's totally safe. We want to start launching a rocket every month and nuclear-powered satellites, when all the research I've seen says that when those rockets fail, which they do around 10% of the time, it could end up blowing up in the atmosphere, and then you've got a big problem.
It's already happened. It's happened a couple of times. We had a Russian reactor that burned out of orbit and slammed into the Andes. We have a U.S. System that crashed into the ocean with a nuclear power plant. We've orbited plutonium-powered spacecraft into deep space, but in order to reach deep space, somebody came up with the idea of using the Earth's gravitational pull as kind of like a bolo.
A slingshot.
A slingshot, exactly. And that meant that we fired this system with this plutonium core reactor out into space, intending that it come back toward the Earth and that it clip the Earth's orbit and then circle the planet and zip back out even further into space.
That's a great idea.
But look at the risk. What if that had missed? What if there had been some kind of a terrible error that would have slammed into the planet?
Well, look at all the space disasters. It's one of the most dangerous things.
Mm-hmm.
Has a huge margin of disaster.
Yeah, these, when you're dealing with imponderables and the likelihood of error, you really shouldn't be dealing on a level of nuclear potential.
Gar, Gar, why is it the mad scientists that get in charge? I guess they'll tell the government bureaucrats whatever they want. I'm sure you've seen, I talk about a lot about it, New Trinity and Beyond, like 10 years ago or longer, narrated by William Shatner. And in that, it shows what I'd read about, but it's the film footage of them detonating hundreds of high-powered hydrogen bombs in the upper atmosphere to, quote, see if they could damage the atmosphere. I mean, who are these people? Why are they doing this?
I sometimes think of this as teenage science, teenage boy science. Why do you do it? Just to see if we can do it. Let's put this firecracker in this can or inside this watermelon and light it off and see what happens.
Or inside this frog if you're George W. Bush.
Oh, yeah, he's done that. And, I mean, these are the guys that came up with the idea to explode a nuclear bomb on the moon.
Exactly. Or they wanted to do crust tests to go drill down to the edge of the mantle and detonate one, but that got nixed. At least we're told it did. These are crazy people.
Yeah. And these are just the stunts that we know about. God knows what they've been doing in the last month.
Oh, man, and with HARP and all the rest of it. Okay, so we're almost out of time here. The book's available at InfoWarsStore.com and better bookstores everywhere. It's a bestseller. Nuclear Roulette. I've read the book. It's absolutely. I learned a lot from it, and believe me, I've probably done, let's not exaggerate, 100 interviews with top experts over the years on this subject and read a lot of books. I learned a lot, and I just see this as one of the biggest threats to my family. I think in closing, I interrupted your train of thought with the space-based stuff, finishing up with the solar flare EMP danger.
Well, yeah, this is something we know about. We've been warned. It could knock us out for 4 to 10 years, according to NASA, according to the National Academy of Sciences. We know what we can do. We need to protect the ultra-high voltage transformers in the United States. There's 350 of them. We can put in ground resistors.
For only $2 billion.
Right. For the Pentagon, that's chump change. And we could do that. There was a bill in the Senate called the SHIELD Act. We got to act on that. Bring it back. that the problem's not going away. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to come sooner. So we got to act now. That's something that we need to do. We know earthquakes are going to pose a problem, but we definitely know that those solar flares are really something that we have to wake up to and deal with.
For folks that don't know, it's happened a bunch in the U.S., but also in Europe since they put up telegraph wires and things. And they think it's roughly a 100-year cycle. There's sub-cycles, but 100 years ago, all over the world, different times, generally, we've pulled up the dates on air before. You can look it up. When these solar flares hit right and all that ionizing different particles come in, it literally can melt wires across continents. And if that happens today, folks, we are in deep trouble.
Yeah, we got hit with a solar flare in '89. It knocked out the power to 6 million Canadians, and it also melted a transformer at the Salem 1 reactor in the U.S.
And that was a small one. I've had different astrophysicists on saying that routinely stuff 20, 30 times bigger hits.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what happens if a really big one hits? I mean, they say it could just be unbelievable.
I hate to think about it.
What are the estimates on exactly from your research how bad it could be? What's the highest rate on one of those flares that we could survive? I forget the name of it. Is it called an M1? What are they called? Yeah,
I think there's a 5-tier level for flares. I'm not exactly sure if that's
but
correct.
Just from memory, I mean the level we're talking about. Some estimates are it could knock out every reactor in North America.
Well, yeah, implicitly, if you lose the power and if you don't have backup, if your diesel generators don't have enough juice to keep running until the power is restored, and if you're talking about power restoration that's going to be foreclosed for a period of months to years, all of those reactors are going to fail. They're going to melt down. They're going to run away. And believe me, as big a problem as decommissioning these reactors is now, the estimate is it's going to cost half $500 million to $1 billion to close down every reactor and 10 years to decommission and isolate the wastes. In the case of Fukushima, they are estimating that it's going to take $137 billion and 30 years to deal with that problem. So,
and it still won't be completely mitigated. In closing, my big issue here is look at Sandy. We're 3 weeks into this. Large areas still don't have power. And that is microscopic compared to a big solar flare. I mean, imagine, and then the diesel runs out, 2-3 weeks, and then the reactors melt down.
Mm-hmm. And then you got the spent fuel in these GE reactors on the rooftops. If you were building a home, is that where you'd put your garbage can?
Well, plus that MOX reactor even had plutonium in it that blew up.
Yeah, the third reactor. They were using a mix of military-grade uranium byproduct. This is, it's returning the favor because initially reactors, the government gave the power plant operators uranium, and in exchange they got plutonium that they turned into buttons for nuclear triggers. And now, thanks to happily, the dismantling of some of the nuclear throwaway in the Russian missiles, we're burning Russian uranium product in our nuclear power plants. That's the MOX, the mixed uranium oxide.
And as that nuclear expert said from Russia, run as fast as you can. Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, we can shut this down if we try. And the environmentalists are just going to have to sit there and be scared of the carbon dioxide plants breathe. We're going to, again, even if you think coal's deadly, folks, I'd say coal over nuclear any day. Nuclear Roulette, the truth about the most dangerous energy source on Earth. Gar Smith, shut down the plants now and start prosecuting the people that have cut back the safety standards because they are endangering us all. Gar, thank you for the time.
Thank you.
All right, folks, get the book. All right, a few final news stories on the side and a few final calls. As well, David in Connecticut says he's got employers and vaccines all over the country, even people that work at tire factories. They're trying to make them take the shots. That's the covert corporate fascism trying to make us take